Hi, I'm Jill Fetcher.
And I'm Maggie Humphrey.
And you're listening to The Agency Scoop,
where we're talking about business from an agency point of view.
And our point of view, with some laughs along the way.
Don't forget to subscribe and tune in every month for the latest scoop.
But like when I was in school, you had to like go to the computer lab to like print things, and we barely used email. Like it was like so different. Welcome to this month's episode of The Agency Scoop. How are you, Maggie?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jill?
Oh, I'm good. It's back to school season, getting back into a routine. All of the activities coming back full force, but it feels good to like get out of the summer craziness.
Yeah, you strapped on your super mom cape and you're doing all the things.
I try. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, I feel like I ebb and flow in pop culture and whether or not I'm paying attention to it. And so when we were talking about Barbie last month and all of the things, I was like, a fun topic for this month to talk about in the news is something that we've been talking about a lot here with the ladies in the office is PR relationships in pop culture. And this is marketing related because somebody is arranging these things. And I can't imagine if that was my job. And I would actually I think I would love it to be
so
matchmaker.
Fun. Oh my God.
For all these celebrity couples and be like, this is who they should date. Let's make sure
go
they
out
meet.
to dinner here. You need to show face here at this event, organizing that whole thing. Yeah.
I love it. And I love the masterminds behind it. I love all of the details. So I thought we could talk about a little bit of the trending news in pop culture of these PR relationships, who's getting together, who's breaking up, starting with the obvious, Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas and their divorce. You know, I'm a Swiftie. I'm very excited that Taylor Swift helped out this whole situation.
I was going to say that. They were out to dinner together. Do you think that was a PR stunt or do you think that was authentic?
I think it was authentic, but I think Taylor knew what she was doing in timing it in that way that she helped Sophie Turner out, because all of the PR is saying that Sophie's a party animal and that she's not taking care of her children and all this stuff. And everybody is talking about how Joe Jonas is turning out those stories and that it's all fake and that he's trying to make himself look good. And Taylor Swift went out to dinner with Sophie Turner and just really made the story like, well, obviously the problem's you, Joe Jonas.
Yeah. If these girls
are joining forces. So
yeah, I love that.
Love it.
I think that both Joe and Sophie's PR teams are working very hard.
Yes,
but they had to pull Taylor in for some extra assistance there. But how about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce? If you have to talk about that, that's all over everything. My Instagram feed, my TikTok, my Twitter, it's everywhere.
Yes, and I was against it at first. I really thought it was like he was trying to make it happen and there was no way. I was like, she does not date athletes. There's no way. And now it seems like she is dating him. And I think it's for real. I don't think that she does fake relationships.
I don't think she does fake either, but I also don't think it's as far along as people think. Like, I kind of just feel like what happened was he was on a podcast, right? And he said like, oh, Taylor Swift's a cute girl or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of turned into a little bit of like a joke. And he was like at her concert and like was kind of just trying to pull her, but more for like a joke than like the real deal. And I just feel like it kind of turned into this like silly little thing. And then he just ended up inviting her to his game. And she just kind of was like, yeah, you know what? It'd be fun to go to an NFL game. And I'd obviously draw a lot of attention if I went and just hang out with these people and cheer on a football game. And of course, I think everyone's just kind of weaving this story off of that. And they're kind of just like letting it happen because like whatever. But I just feel like it's not as deep as people realize.
Yeah.
I feel like she's just going along for the ride.
Yeah. I think she's just having fun. She's in her fun girl era.
Yeah.
And maybe he's fun. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I don't know.
But now I'm into it now. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I was dying at the TikToks when, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're like girls are asking like their significant others or like their dad. They'll say things like, oh my God, like I can't believe that Taylor Swift put Travis Kelce on the map. Like no one knew who he was until she started dating him. And then the guys get all like up in arms. They're like, that's not true. Travis Kelce's the best, blah, blah, blah. And they'll go off on a rant.
I shared a meme last night that was like, I love when Taylor Swift helps out small little niche brands like the NFL. And I just think it's amazing because it's, you know.
But it's actually
It's
insane
true.
because his jersey sales went up this weekend.
Like 400%.
And the game views went up. I just can't get over that. Like, the NFL is one of the most well-known franchises in America.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift still somehow boosts views and ratings and sales for the brand. Like, is there anything she can't do?
No, there's nothing she can't do. She's amazing. I will say, not that I tuned into the game to see if she was going to be there, because I didn't believe that she was going to be there. But the game was already on in my house. I was taking a little Sunday football nap on the couch while my husband was watching the game. And I kind of woke up to, oh, and there's Taylor with Donna Kelce out in the box. And I like woke up and was like, huh. So then I did watch, because I just kept wanting to see what they were going to say about her, and they kept showing her. And so I get it. I didn't change those numbers because I was already tuned in, I guess you could say. But, you know, but yeah, those are my two favorite stories right now. Yeah. But we have a list of a few others. You want to go through them kind of rapid fire and say whether you think they are a fake PR relationship or not?
Yes. Kylie Jenner, Timothy Chalamet. 100% fake.
Fake, for sure.
Absolute phony PR stunt.
I don't believe they've ever been in the same room together.
No.
What about Pete Davidson and Madeline Klein?
I really feel like it's again one of those situations where it's not as deep as people think. I don't think it's PR stunt. I think that they're just hanging out and having fun. But people are like, oh my God, they're spotted together, they're dating. When in reality, they could have just gone on like one date.
I think he pulled in Ariana Grande on his own. And then when that happened, then I think people started lining it up like he is the unicorn that will help anybody's image, like by dating Pete Davidson, get them back in the news.
I mean,
like I didn't know who
Madeline
Madeline
Klein
Klein was.
Opportunity with Sophie Turner.
That would be amazing.
Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater. I just think this is messy. I don't really necessarily think it's a PR stunt because it makes her look really bad.
True. If you don't know, they both allegedly cheated on their spouses with each other while filming Wicked.
Yeah.
Is that what they were doing? And so now they both left their spouses and are dating each other. So
and his ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife is like basically saying like Ariana's not a girl's girl, like all this slander against her. And people are like, what's this girl doing? She was only married for like a year. It's just...
Yeah. But I think Ariana Grande is just the Elizabeth Taylor of our time, and she's going to be married 12 times. And that's just who she is. She's just collecting husbands, and I like that for her. It's fine.
Whatever.
We had to go through it. We've been talking about it. It's the biggest topic here at the agency, I think, outside of actual work stuff. Hey, Maggie, let's give our listeners a peek behind the curtain.
You mean like a look into what we're actually doing?
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like we have had some good recent new business opportunities. One of them being a really large project that we had last quarter. I guess it kind of spanned from last spring into the end of summer. And it was a really tough project for our team, not something we typically do, but it's a really good opportunity. And we were a little hesitant, I think, to try it again just because it was a grueling task. But we took all the learnings that we took away from the first project and really applied that to this time around. We created new brand guidelines, really strict, like I would say, guardrails. Yeah. And the clients on board, we kind of you outline the retainer so you can speak to that more, but I feel like you really structured that a certain way based on how things went the first time around. And I feel like overall we all feel good about it, even the teammates who worked on it the first time, who you would think would be hesitant to do it again, but they're all for it. Everyone's really excited. So it's a good feeling.
I think having that post-project meeting to say what worked well, what didn't work well, and in a perfect world, how would you change it? Everyone came to that meeting with a ton of ideas and things that we didn't really think about. Some of it was like the client personalities were tough. So it was a little hard from time to time thinking of solutions like, well, this guy is just kind of hard to work with, right? But figuring out in the scoping process, like putting those guardrails up and saying, this is how we're going to do this. If you go beyond this guardrail or you want it this way, it'll cost X amount more. So putting in those stipulations and really making sure the client understands them was super important. So that was good. I feel like it was a big win.
I think having that post-mortem, as we called it, team meeting after the project, kind of debrief and work through a lot of that. It was the first time we've ever done anything like that. And it was really beneficial, and I think something that we want to apply to more things internally in the future, whether it's a temporary project with a client or something new that we do internally. I think we kind of also use that as like an internal, we do a lot of internal training here at Cypress North. We have multiple meetings a week just as a team going through new things. You know, as we know, the digital marketing industry changes every single day. So we kind of had a similar meeting to debrief on, okay, what's working in training, what's not working in training, what do we want to see more of? So just really rolling that into a lot of different elements has been really cool.
One of the other exciting things that is happening, more exciting for us than anybody else, but the in the Buffalo office, we created a courtyard with our alleyway between us and the junkyard next door. And it took a little while, but it's now a really nice, beautiful outside usable space. And we have some picnic tables. We have a fire pit, but like a gas one that we can turn on and off. So that's really exciting. It's just like a nice way to give people here more space to use.
This is the first time I've been here in a while. It looks really good.
Yeah. And then testing, something I didn't add to our notes, but I was just thinking as you were talking about training, one of the things that we're testing. So as Maggie said, we do a lot of training every week. We have several meetings a week dedicated to training, especially on the marketing side. And typically we're doing like, here's how to use this tool, or here's how to optimize bids in this way, or, you know, something in that vein. And what we're starting to test out is assigning either, you know, once a month or once every few weeks, each person is kind of going around and they have to prepare kind of a case study for one of their clients. And going through, here's the problem, here's the steps we took to solve it, here's the results that we saw, and kind of going through some of the nitty gritty of that to show other people some of the problems on different clients, taking that high level view and then going down to the details. And so we're excited to test that out and see if that it's just a different way of speaking about the problems or the training that we're looking at. And so I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. It also gives people who might be a little bit greener in that strategy realm an opportunity to think a little bit differently and stretch that strategy brain of theirs that they're kind of developing. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, you should. But we recently spiced up our newsletter a little bit thanks to our awesome content writer, Heather. I feel like she's just done a really great job overall, just making it kind of fun. We include pieces from all different departments on there. What's new, what's the latest and greatest thing at the agency, and just any digital marketing news, really. But she comes up with really funny, punny, I should say, titles. And I don't know, she's just done a really great job with it. So I just wanted to shout that out.
And now it's the moment you've all been waiting for.
It's time to get into the main scoop.
I love this topic.
I know, this will be fun. So I think just to start, I wanted to break down the 5 generations. And I do want to preface this by saying, through my research over the years and really just having an identity crisis myself, not knowing where I fit in, a lot of websites say different things for millennials and Gen Z. So what I have here is just the top stat that I could find.
Great.
But essentially what it says is we start with the silent generation, who was born between 1925 and 1945, baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964, Generation X born between 1965 and 1980, millennials born between 1981 and 2000, and Generation Z born between 2001 and 2020. Half the time when I look it up, it says millennials end at like 1995.
Yeah.
And I'm a 96er. So I'm like, am I Gen Z? But then this one says millennials end at 2000. So I've seen it in various ways. So I just identify as a millennial and call it a day.
I like that. I like that. I am 1982, not afraid to age myself here, but I am also kind of on the cusp where I very much identify as a millennial. But my husband, who's a year and a half older than me, I would put him squarely in Gen X.
That's funny.
And so it's very different, I think, even just like those couple years where there's that gray area.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Everyone that's kind of on the cusp feels that way, I think.
You kind of just fit in like where you feel you fit in.
Yes. And I think that one of the things that I would say is that when you look at history, every generation of young people, the generation before them is like, oh, these young people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's hard to overcome that because you feel it when you're young. You feel it when you're entering the workforce and you're the youngest generation in the office and you're getting there and everyone thinks everyone in your generation is this or that. And then when you get to that next time, like when I started working with people that were born when I was in college, it's like then you start seeing some of those stereotypes like come up and you're thinking, oh, this is this or this is that. Like you start having some of those negative things. And it's really easy to get sucked into the trap of, more experience is better. Right? It's really easy to get sucked into that. But also when you're younger, it's easy to blame people that are older than you for being not technologically savvy or just being too old school and like stuck in their ways.
I've definitely done that.
Yeah. 100%.
I can't say like I do have some misconceptions I want to go through.
Yes.
And I'm not going to lie, I've thought of these myself. So I've fallen victim to these, I'm sure, from other people, but I've also thought some of these myself as well.
100%. 100%. There's a reason the stereotypes exist. It's because so many people like come to that conclusion at the same time. But breaking the stereotypes and educating each other and creating a workplace that is inclusive and so that people don't feel like, oh, I'm Gen Z, I could never work there because everyone will be disrespectful. Or I'm Gen X and I could never work there because everyone there is too young.
A common misconception for boomers and Gen Xers are they're slackers, they're resistant to change, and lack technological proficiency. And all I could think of is that meme. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's like a millennial or a Gen Zer being like, this high up executive gets paid triple my salary but doesn't know how to print a PDF file.
But then I think as someone who knows how to like make a PDF and I can do it myself, I also think, well, that person doesn't need to know that.
Yeah, right? That's true.
As my dad likes to say, the internet is a fad. He doesn't need to know how to use the computer. So he's always like, I'm worried about your job security, Jill. The internet's a fad.
I mean, he's what, a boomer?
He's a square boomer, yep. He's right there.
They know better.
They do.
But yeah, for me, I feel like my first job while I was in college, but it led into my first job out of college, I worked with a lot of boomers and even Gen Xers. And those stereotypes stared me right in the face every day. There were a lot of just those moments where I just wanted to hit my head against my desk like, oh my God, why don't you know this? Or it's not that hard. Or like I would have a great idea, but it was a very forward-thinking idea using, technology that's newer. Because again, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but my first job while I was in college and out of college, I was working in-house in Cypress North as a marketing agency.
Yes.
So I was the main point of contact working alongside Cypress North. And of course, we're very forward-thinking. We're trying all of the newest, latest and greatest things. And I would bring that to their attention. Like, we should try this. We should test this. Look at all of the benefits out of this. And they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. They didn't understand it. They were still very much stuck in old time media, like radio and TV ads. And it was just like, we got to try something different. It was like talking to a wall sometimes.
It's a misconception that every boomer or Gen Xer feels that way, right? But it is true sometimes. But thinking about it like anything else from like a data perspective, you don't feel a certain way just because of your age and the day you were born. Everything else affects it. So it might be where you live or what industry you work in. Because I know a lot of people that would identify more as Gen X or baby boomers that are very technologically advanced, that are very accepting of change and are always wanting to try something new. And so it is all a compilation of all those things, but it is something that gets thrown around.
Yeah.
Like they just don't want to try things new.
There's always a few bad apples and you can't let that ruin the entire patch, right? They say. But I have also worked with boomers in other jobs. And specifically, I had a leadership role in a previous job. And this person was pretty technically savvy. They were a great leader. And I learned a ton from them. So I have had good and bad experiences.
Yes, exactly. So what about millennials? What do you think the biggest misconception is?
Yeah, so some common misconceptions there are they set too many boundaries. They really prioritize the work-life balance, which I feel like so does Gen Z. This is like a newer thing coming out with Gen Z. They don't like to work those extra hours to get things done anymore. They're entitled, lazy, won't commit.
And again, I think it is that where you're from, how you were raised, all of those things that make the difference because some people just do prioritize their personal life over work, or they don't care about a career. They're just doing it for a job or different things. And so you have to kind of know what somebody's priorities are, not just how old they are to think that.
Yeah, you're definitely a millennial in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was the first generation to really work with technology.
Yes.
Like, it's like the main top of mind piece to everything. We need to try this. We need to do this. And I think that was really intimidating for like the boomer and the Gen Xers. So I think that's kind of where those misconceptions started. Or it's like, oh, they're lazy. They don't want to do it the hard way. They want to try it the easy way and do it on the computer or try this or try that. So I just feel like that's where that stuff kind of started.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking about this before this. So story time as a millennial. When I went to college, you had to go to the computer lab to use a computer. I didn't have a laptop. We had room phones. I didn't have a cell phone until I was a junior in college. And I did have like a big chunky desktop computer that was like my uncle's or something that I got and then brought to my dorm room. But we didn't really use email. You had to go to save your thing on a disk, go to a computer lab, print it out, all of that. When I first got a job, I had a desktop computer. And actually the first week of my first real big girl job after I graduated, the entire first week, something happened to the server and they couldn't access any files because nothing was like in the cloud. It was just like a server room. And so for a straight week, nobody could do anything on their computers.
Wow, what a life.
It was crazy. It was bizarre. And I had like a desktop computer at work. I didn't have a laptop. When I would travel for work to go see clients, they had a few laptops that you could like borrow and bring with you in case you had to do some work while you were there. But
like
it was
renting out a book from the library, like you rent out a laptop?
Exactly.
Wow. And
it was very difficult to connect to the internet with those. Like you had to go in a hotel room, connect to the Ethernet cord, all of that. But then eventually I got, a laptop that I would work on all the time and take with me and take home. And so I was just saying before we started recording this, and I still work from a laptop here and I take it home every night and I use it. I don't have my own computer at home. Like I don't have a home computer device because for probably 15 years, I've had a laptop through work that if I needed to do something online at night, I would just use my laptop from work and do that. Again, I've also always worked for like small independently owned companies. I don't work for like a big corporation where you can't get to Facebook on your laptop, or something like that. But it's so different to think like now interviewing people that are entry level, every single person has their own computer, their own device.
Yeah,
they needed it to go to college. They needed it to do their work.
That's how it was for me is like in college, I feel like you need a laptop. If you don't get one in high school, you need one in college. I also did a lot of online classes because I worked full time while I was in school and it just worked better for my schedule. So I do have a laptop at home, but I do prefer my work laptop. So I do take it home and use it all the time. But details. What I was going to say is something else that's I think interesting with the Gen Z generation is because of that reason that you need laptops for school. So many people are more comfortable taking online classes. I think that's why we're also seeing such a big boom in remote jobs is because that Gen Z generation is comfortable with working on their laptop from anywhere. They're used to it because they had to do it in college. So I think that's something that's new in the industry and in the world, I should say, is not just because of the pandemic, but also just that's just what Gen Z's used to and they like it.
One of my favorite things, this sounds silly, one of my favorite things, but I kind of like get like a little tickle of delight. Like I think it's really funny when I meet somebody that's my age, which I do a lot because kids' activities and stuff, I'm always meeting other parents and whoever else. I love when I meet somebody that's around my age and they tell me that they work from home, but they've been doing it since before it was cool. Because I think that is something like as like a 40-year-old person, a lot of people will say, oh, I work from home all the time, but I've been doing it for 10 years. So before everyone else was working from home. And it's like a badge of honor that they've like done that. And I don't know. It just makes me happy. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, that is funny. I think some common misconceptions too with Gen Z is they're too reliant on technology and they don't want to work at all. So it's like, I think a lot of times Millennial and Gen Zs are really lumped together, but more so now, like I just said, they're so comfortable with using technology and just working remote or just doing whatever. A common misconception is they don't know how to do anything without technology.
Mm-hmm. I think our Gen Z here at Cypress North is second to none. Mm-hmm. I don't know about their friends. Maybe their friends are lazy and only use technology. I don't know. But I would say our Gen Z is amazing and they work so hard.
So hard.
They are the ones that, you know, I think it's a little bit different where they don't necessarily like if people at the end of the day are having a drink in the kitchen or we're playing a game on the TV in the collab space, like they're not the ones to run to it immediately. Mm-hmm. Like they would rather stay another half an hour and finish their work and go home or then join us and like finish it. But they are some of the hardest working people here are our Gen Z, I think.
I agree.
And I think too, maybe they're super reliant on technology, but that's been their whole life.
Yeah. It's also like our industry.
They don't remember the days of the computer lab.
That's right.
One of the funny things that I think about with the Gen Z here that I found out recently, and I probably sounded like a real boomer when I said this to them, but they were talking about being on dating apps. And someone here said, oh, well, I had a boyfriend for a while, so I haven't been on the app since freshman year. And I was like, what do you mean? You use dating apps in college? And they were like, yeah. And what? I was like, oh, I just thought you started using them after you were like done with college and in the real world. And like people. You just can't be around people all the time.
No, because it's all based on proximity.
Yeah. But like in college, I just thought, oh, you'd still like meet people.
Yeah.
The regular way, like in person, in class, or like at a bar where everyone in college is going. But I also went to college in a small town, and like there was only like 2 bars that everyone went to. So even if you were on an app, you'd still be in the same room.
Right.
But I was just surprised by that. I was like, oh, you even use that technology that young? Like that's how you do it? And they're like, yeah, that's how it goes. And I'm like, oh, okay.
There's always silly things. For me too, because I'm on that cusp of like the generations, there's always things coming that like Gen Z will say or do that I sometimes like don't know about. And I feel like I'm very woke with pop culture and like terms like whatever. But sometimes like they'll say something and I don't know. I'm like, what is this? I need you to tell me everything.
How do we get people to work better together and not worry about these stereotypes and to get to know the individual instead of like assuming things about them?
Yeah.
You know what they say
for sure.
About
I think
people who assume.
Like you said earlier, the first step is really breaking down the barriers of those misconceptions. Like you really got to try your best to put those aside. And once you can really do that, I think you can really find that cohesion between different generations in the workplace. So you got to overcome that bias, acknowledge that everyone brings something to the table, no matter the generation you come from. Mm-hmm. So like I said, like I've worked with boomers that I had a really hard time working with, and I felt like they had a lot of misconceptions about me and therefore weren't listening to me and like what I brought to the table. But then I had boomers at other jobs that validated me and acknowledged my strengths and forced me to grow in those areas. And I really looked up to them and learned so much. And in that space, we all worked really well together. We found that team cohesion and we were really able to perform well. So it's definitely possible.
Something that I believe we do well here, and I've seen other companies do well, but it seems to be a struggle in some places, especially when we work with other clients. You can kind of tell what the dynamic is like on their end in the corporate world. But I think something that we do well is that if there are 6 people in a meeting, it is not just the person with the highest title talking, coming up with all the ideas and doing that. I think we do a good job of making sure everyone feels heard and saying, hey, you haven't said much. What do you think about this?
Yep.
Or what are your ideas? And we don't even have to do that often here because everyone does feel that way. And so when we're in a meeting talking about things, most of the time, everyone's piping up and saying, you know, what they have to say or, you know, what they want to be heard. Where I think there's definitely some cultures where you're in the room and the oldest person with the highest title is the one saying everything that they think needs to be done and assigning out tasks and doing that. And maybe that young person doesn't feel like they could be heard. Or maybe the young person is speaking up, but the older person isn't receptive to it.
Yep.
So creating that environment where you're like, it doesn't matter what they're wearing or what you think about them because they're 22 or they're 52. Everybody needs to say, okay, from your experience, what do you think?
Yep.
Or what are your ideas for this project?
I think another thing is respecting boundaries as a manager and delegating certain tasks out and having an understanding of what those people bring to the table. And I think we all can agree that more so now, post-pandemic, people really appreciate flexibility in the workplace, but they are seeing that those younger generations appreciate it much more. And it's really at the forefront for them. That's something that's really important to them when they're looking for jobs. And I think with like the boomers and the Gen Xers, it's more in their face now, but they spent many years working those grueling hours. I feel like they're the generation that's known for working those extra hours to get something done, whatever it takes. And that's why they sometimes look at the younger generations like they're lazy, because they're not always like that. They really focus on work-life balance. So allowing that flexibility and setting those boundaries between different departments and different generations, projects, whatever it may be, because again, it's an important factor for them.
And I think as people, when there are complaints, so you said as a manager, and some of the things that I think about in my experience, at a previous job, I was a manager to several people that were older than me. And most of them had no problem with that. But there was one woman that comes to mind that like, she did not like it from the moment she started, that I was 10 plus years younger than her and she was reporting to me, and she made it very well known that she didn't like that. And so the person who was above me, I learned a lot from her because she would ask questions like, so what is she doing that you don't think is fair? Or what have you been tasked with that you don't agree with? And asking those questions related to the deliverables to keep turning it away, or from like, the responsibilities at hand, to turn it away from, you just don't like that she's younger than you, because there's always going to be those bad apples and those people that have a chip on their shoulder that just think like, well, I've been in the business longer, and so I should be her manager, I should be this
really
or that.
Good point. I actually experienced something very similar. At a previous job, I actually went from entry level to a management position pretty quickly. And there was a lot of rumblings when that happened. And typically when there's promotions done, it's kind of a big deal. It's a big celebration. And it was for the managers. But then all of my previous peers were very salty about it. They didn't really go out of their way to congratulate me. I kind of got the cold shoulder for a little while. It was very awkward because a lot of them were older than me, and a lot of them had actually been working at the company longer than me. So that was really tough. But I remember, a few months later, I was talking to one of my previous peers, and they were probably 6 to 8 years older than me. And they were like, I acknowledge that when you first were promoted, I was a little standoffish about it. I was just honestly shocked, and I apologize for that. But I do see how much you bring to the table and how beneficial you are to the company. And I think that you really deserve this position.
Good for you.
Wow, the validation I needed.
For reflecting.
Yeah.
That's really hard. And that's something, like you said, like if there's an older generation that thinks, well, I'm here longer than them every day, so that equates I work harder, to ask those questions like, what have they not done on time? What have they not delivered of quality? Like, where is the problem? Because it seems like they're doing all of their work, but just because they leave at 5 instead of 7 doesn't mean that they're not working hard. And
exactly.
And it's tough. And there's a lot of times in your life that you go through those things. Like I remember when the first baby I had, and then I was very aware of my time management, because I was someone that used to stay late at the office all the time. And then when I came back from my first maternity leave, being like, oh, I am out the door at 5 o'clock. And because I need to get home, they're only awake for like an hour and a half, like it's like you need those things, and it kind of ebbs and flows, but you need to realize that even people without kids, even people that are older and their kids are older, like you need that flexibility to live your life. Something I wanted to mention too is communication preferences that differ with the generations. And I think this is like one of the biggest things to take away is that people from different generations think differently about how they want to communicate with their coworkers, with clients, with each other. And I think just asking out front and not trying to assume things like, oh, hey, you're Gen Z. Do you want me to text you? Like, like that could be offensive, but saying, how do you prefer to be communicated? Do you have email on your phone? Do you not? Do you want me to schedule a time on your calendar when there's something to speak about as opposed to just calling you? And because I will say there's a lot of people that we deal with certain clients that just call my cell phone randomly. And I'm always like, why are they calling? And it'll be over nothing. Like it won't be urgent. But when someone calls me and doesn't tell me they're calling, I think it's like an emergency. But, and even today I was talking to a prospect. We were talking about this at lunch. I was talking to a prospect this morning and said, okay, this is great. I'm going to put together your proposal. I'll send you a few times. We can pick a time next week to go through the proposal. And he said, well, when you're done with it, just text me and I'll let you know what I'm doing that minute. And then we can talk about it on the phone. And I was like, okay. But like, to me, that's not how I communicate. No. But some people like that kind of thing. They don't want to be tied to their calendar. They want you to call them spontaneously. Yeah. And again, that's just communication preference and shouldn't necessarily be a generational thing.
We worked that into our questionnaire. Whenever we onboard a new client, we have, what is your communication preference? We'll include like Teams or Slack or email or whatever it may be. But it's funny because I actually have a client who they don't think about that at all, I don't think. And they'll just randomly like pop a meeting on my calendar. No warning at all. Or they'll just call me, and I don't have a desk phone here. The phone number in my email signature is just the office phone.
Oh, the main line.
So they'll call every once in a while, and Matt will message me and be like, so-and-so's on the line for you. Are you available to talk? And most of the time in a meeting. So I'm like, no, I can't. And then I just end up emailing them, and it's fine. I'm like, this all could have just been handled over email.
The meeting that could have been an email.
All the time.
Every refrain heard around the world.
But I will say that it was a little bit annoying up front with, just the random meetings getting popped on my calendar. But more like in the last few months, as it's happened, I've kind of just been like, you know what, maybe this is just what they prefer and how they like to do things. And there's been a few times where I'll reply back and say, this time doesn't work for me. Does this time work better? And that's totally fine. And then we do have these meetings, and they're actually really helpful. And I don't know, it's just been a better experience overall in the last few months. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Were we too judgy on the other generations?
I want to know for you, as like, I don't want to say older, but you're at the top of the millennial generation based on your birthday. Do you ever, like, what are your overall takeaways of like that younger Gen Z generation? I know you kind of spoke to a little bit about some of our team here, and they're great, but have you come across those misconceptions at all?
I don't know. I have always been a learner. I'm a curious person. I always want to learn new ways to do things. I want to learn new ways that other people are doing things or talking about things. I love learning new industries, which is why I like new business. And so I love working with younger people. I love asking. I'm always like, let me know if I've gone too far with asking you these questions. When I'm like asking them about the dating apps or like how they do this in school or how, different things work in their lives. Like, and I'm always like, let me know if I go too far. But I don't know. I don't have any bad Gen Zs around me that I feel that way about. Right. And also, I think becoming a parent. And shout out all the parents out there. If you feel this way, please let me know if you feel the same way. I think the whole like entitlement, can't do anything without technology, all of that. I feel like I always just like judge parents. So like when I meet a Gen Z that like can't get anything done or they can't like think for themselves because like their parents have literally done everything for them, I just think, ugh. They're not like entitled because they're Gen Z. They're entitled because their parents did everything for them. Do you know what I mean? So I always like equate that to like parents coddling, not necessarily the whole generation.
It's the previous generation's fault.
Exactly. It's all of these millennials like me raising these entitled kids.
Or Gen Xers.
Yes, 100%.
Now it's time for everyone's favorite segment.
And all of you know one. Don't be that girl. Do you want to lead the segment, Don't Be That Girl?
I feel like a lot of agencies can relate to this, especially if you have like a creative department or a development department. But I've been working with the website team, and we're producing a new website for a client. And it really grinds my gears when a client will sign off on something, whether it be a creative piece, a website design, whatever. But then like weeks later, they act like that never happened and they want all of these revisions and changes made.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no. We're done here. We're done here.
We did that part.
Yeah. What's going on? And they're like, oh, can we do this? Can we put more here? Can we put more content here? Oh, can we put this form fill on the page? Can we put it this high on the page instead of down here? And they're just like changing the entire structure. I'm like, no. We've been through tons of meetings. Mm-hmm. We've been through wireframes, presentations, like all different style mocks for these pages. And it's been signed, sealed, delivered. Like, we're done. So that's my don't be that girl, don't be that client that I guess goes back on your word after you've signed off on something. I mean, I can get it if it's like right after the fact, but like weeks, months later.
Yeah.
We need to move forward.
It's been in development.
It's too late now.
You can change it after launch.
Yeah, sure.
To what you want.
You can do it.
It's funny because that's, in relation to a website project. And so a website, we always say it's a living, breathing thing. It should always be changing. It should always be evolving. It should always be adding more content that's relevant, all of those things. But that being said, once you approve the design, it goes into development, like they're working on this thing. So just maybe like don't show everybody else for a little bit. Because I think that seems to be what tends to happen with some of these projects is that like someone will say, yes, this is good. And then they'll be like, oh, but then I showed Tony and he said he likes this. And then we made that change. And then I showed John and he said he likes this. And then I showed Mary and she said she likes this. And it's like, so they keep changing it because they keep showing more people and it's like designed by committee. And I'm always like, please stop showing people till it's live.
Yeah.
Just wait. You're in charge of this project. You just do it.
Yeah, we don't need everyone and their mother buying in on the design. That's fine. We're professionals here. We know what we're doing. But it's funny because I've had it in some circumstances where some of the changes they're asking to be made are similar to what like the previous website or landing page or whatever looks like. Backward. And I'm like, but you're asking us to redesign this for a reason because the old version is not great. So what are we doing here? Your word should be the final say anyways. Mm-hmm. So it's like once you accept that or sign off on it, it's just like it should be done.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything. And that's it for this month's Agency Scoop.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Agency Scoop.
The Agency Scoop is produced by Cypress North, a digital agency in Buffalo, New York. Our producer is Greg Finn. Our editor is Eric Barnes. Our graphics are by Sammy Hansen.
Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.
You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to share your thoughts about the episode and give us ideas for future topics.
We'll see you next time.